Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at HBO Max's Locked Down, a new pandemic filmed feature set during the lockdown, featuring Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think is
Yes.
I just say his name. I can spell it. I can't say it. As two estranged lovers who come together when working a heist to steal a diamond in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. We're also talking about One Night in Miami, Regina King's first turn in the director's chair, featuring a fictional telling of four famous Black culturalists coming together to, I don't know, hash it out, talk about the future and the past and where they've come from and where they've been and where they're going. We're going to talk about some trailers, some things that are coming out. And the first thing we need to get to is, of course, the news. Our first story this week, The Many Saints of Newark is delayed to fall 2021. This is perfect for us Sopranos fans out there. Andy, are you a Sopranos fan? I guess you are,
yes,
right?
I'm a
Sopranos.
big Sopranos fan.
Yeah.
I watched it a couple of times. Great series. Some people also say the greatest TV series of all time.
Some people say that.
Possibly. No, I'm definitely a big fan. And so to catch people up, there Many Saints of Newark is a prequel film that takes place in the 60s, which in the Sopranos series, there's a lot of flashbacks to Tony Soprano's childhood, which is in the 50s and 60s era. And so it's going to be when he is young, and also a number of the older people in the series will then be young men, like Junior Soprano or a lot of the other famous people. So it should be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it. It has been delayed. It was supposed to come out in March. It's going to actually be kicked up to or forward to the fall in hopes of a possible theatrical release.
I am not a Sopranos fan. I've never really gotten into it. I've really tried to watch The Sopranos. I watched season 1 definitely in college and started watching season 2 and just was not into what was happening. But I know a lot of people are really excited about this movie. It is being written by David Chase, who is the original writer and creator of The Sopranos. So it's very exciting. Got a lot of returning veterans, people who were involved with the show. Not to mention James Gandolfini's son, right, is playing
him. He's playing
Tony
him.
Soprano.
Yes, he's playing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Who I assume is this wonderful character we have featured here on stream. I don't mean to say anything else about this, Andy.
No, there's not really too much to the story.
Yeah, I mean it's a good announcement.
It's a move. It's a move of something that was supposed to come out in a couple of months. And we'll actually have another update a little bit later in the show.
Yeah,
about shuffling dates.
Warner Brothers has been shuffling dates, yeah, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more in just a couple of stories. But this one's interesting, jumping from September to March, right? Is where we're at?
No, we're going September,
from March, going back to September.
Yes.
It's so weird to me that movies like this will just sit on a shelf, right? I mean, this says it was mostly done. They didn't really have to stop for the pandemic. There were a few days of reshoots they had to squeeze in last September, but I mean, that wasn't even really. I guess that was
it has more to do with other films that are going to be released.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. Movies just like sitting on the shelves, collecting dust, waiting their turn to come out.
This does seem to insinuate that streaming is very flexible.
Yeah,
you can. I mean, for a big theatrical release, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to change it by a week.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on streaming, yeah, you can change the date by several months, and it's not really a big deal.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Except for poor Wonder Woman and those for popcorn tins.
Oh man,
just sitting around for 3 or 4 months.
God, yeah, the novelty, the novelty theater merch, right? Like when you go to Cinemark and you get a ticket for Wonder Woman, and they're like, "Oh, $10 extra, you can get a T-shirt, or you can get for an extra $1 at the concession stand, you get the popcorn tin that says Wonder Woman on the side instead of like a real one." 3 months ago, they were giving those things away at Cinemark. They couldn't get rid of them fast enough. Nobody cared. I legitimately threw one in the trash because they didn't offer recycling at Cinemark. I didn't know what else to do with it. They were like, take it home. It's like, it's a metal tin. What am I going to do with this? Like, I'm going to use it for throwing up in? I mean, come on, this thing sucks. I don't know. Our next story, Chris Evans to possibly reprise his role as Captain America. This is interesting because I was under the impression Chris Evans is so over doing MCU stuff, but apparently he is nearing a deal to reprise his role in future Marvel projects. Andy, you're the comic book man. What do you know about this?
Okay, so reprise his role means a lot of things, or can, and cannot mean a lot of things.
Sure.
It does not mean he's doing entire films. He is not going to be suiting up to play Captain America again in like a full length feature. What he'll be doing is probably making small cameos, similar to how Iron Man, after the first 3 Iron Man films, Tony Stark still shows up in the rest of the Marvel universe. So it'll be small roles, kind of like how, I guess, more like how Iron Man was in the Spider-Man series. He comes in as a mentor, but he's not like the main thing at all. So that's more of what it's going to be. It's going to be really small roles, still involved, but on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, it's also really unclear whether or not this is exclusive to film, right? Like there are people that pointed out, hey, they're doing a lot of Marvel series. Maybe Captain America comes up in one of those briefly. This may be a straight to Disney Plus thing. This doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be appearing on the silver screen. Nobody really knows. Marvel issued no comment following this story. They had nothing to say about it. Of course they wouldn't. Why would they? So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think there's so much potential for like legacy characters in the Marvel universe and DC for that matter. All these comic book movies have potential for older actors and actresses to kind of triumphantly return. Look at Michael Keaton coming back in what's supposed to be the next the Flash movie, right? The upcoming The Flash coming back as Batman. So Captain America returning, Chris Evans showing back up on screen. I'm here for it, right? I feel the same way about Tony Stark and Iron Man. Like, bring him back. Why not? Make him some kind of mentor later. Have him show up in a flashback. Let those actors and actresses make their dollars, all right? And let the fans get excited about the characters we love. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing. Everyone loves Chris Evans. Everyone loves Captain America. It's been a very successful character, so you can't just put him on the shelf.
No, you got to do something with them. Maybe you let them sit for a few years, but like it just seems like there's so much buzz, right? Like you might as well. Hollywood loves remaking stuff. Well, why not dip back into the old character barrel, huh? Like, oh yeah, Captain America made money. It's time to deal with Chris Evans, get him to do a couple things for us. It'll be great. I don't know. I don't mind it. I think it's a good thing. I think there's plenty of room for new stories to be told in the Marvel Universe while also honoring the ones that came before. Our last story, Godzilla vs. Kong moves up 2 months to March. Godzilla vs. Kong is happening. For those who don't know, it's the most exciting cinematic event ever to happen in the history of film. And it's coming straight to HBO Max on March 26th instead of what would have been, May?
May, yes.
Why would they move this up? Right.
So a couple of reasons. So we just talked about how the Saints of Newark is moving forward to, or more moving back to the fall. And so what you have is the spring without a lot of big releases on HBO Max. And if you're trying to sell a new service, you got to have content. And so far, we had Wonder Woman for basically Christmas through January. February, there's not really a new release. And so they need something, they need content basically if they're going to keep subscribers. And so this was a big movie supposed to come out in May. It's now going to come out in March. And so I think that's the main reason that they're moving it forward.
This is the direct follow-up to Godzilla from Godzilla King of the Monsters, I'm sorry, from 2019.
Which we did review
2 years ago. Yeah, man, talk about a forgettable film. My God. I remember like 2 scenes from that movie. And that's about it. It's this globe-trotting run through the dark to try to keep up with the monster and then subsequently deal with the monster. And you could say, well, that's what most Godzilla movies are, but nay, the Godzilla King of the Monsters is something uniquely special. Didn't make our worst film of the year list, but it was close.
Yeah,
it was up there. It was not good. So what's interesting is this movie is definitely following in the direct footsteps of that. It's going to star the same stars: Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, Rebecca Hall, Kyle Chandler. We are missing Tom Holland from, or not Tom Holland, the people from Kong Skull Island. That's who aren't in this movie, it seems.
Right. I wasn't sure if that was actually part of this universe, but apparently it is.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that either. Apparently that was actually pretty good. So
it's on HBO. I just saw it the other day. I was like, maybe we should watch that for the show because I heard Kong Skull Island wasn't bad.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
That's a good thing for when it comes out. But yeah, there is the MonsterVerse essentially that is going to come together in this epic, King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah, it's interesting how this is going to go. Obviously, Legendary Pictures is putting up a little bit of a stink about it, I think, right? Like they definitely had a problem when Warner Brothers said, hey, we're dumping all of our movies from 2021 onto HBO Max same day, because Legendary produces a lot of those. And they were like, well, hold on a second. like you have deals with us that say you can't do that right away. We got to work this out. So it seems like they're at some kind of agreement because it's happening according to this. What's surprising to me is we haven't seen any marketing material yet. Where's the trailer, right? Like there's no buzz about Godzilla versus Kong, and you'd think this is going to be the match of the Titans, right? This is going to be a big deal. Where's it at?
Well, it seems like whenever there's a marketing strategy for streaming, it seems to be much different. When you have a big theatrical release, you might have 6 months or longer of a marketing campaign. Streaming seems to always be shorter. Like a big movie might only get a trailer like a month before. So I think we'll probably start to see some things next month, but you don't really need to advance or to advertise too far in advance when it's really accessible online.
Yeah, and I know that's like our new reality, but let me tell you, I'm still a sucker for like a trailer that's like 6 months out. I love looking at stuff like that, but
oh yeah,
that is not our reality anymore. That's okay. Keep it here on Off Script for more. I'm definitely. I mean, any aspirations for Godzilla versus Kong? Indeed, like it should be something incredible, but like I really think it's going to be lukewarm. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, apparently the first kind of Godzilla reboot from 2014 was really good, and a lot of people liked it. And then the follow up that we saw, King of the Monsters, was really pretty bad. So who knows? It could be either extreme.
Yeah, 2014 featuring Bryan Cranston and Aaron Taylor Johnson, right? Yeah, that was the 2014 one. That was from Legendary, and then 2019 was King of the Monster. Are those supposed to be like subsequent? Those are the same.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be the sequel to the.
Oh God. Okay, you'd think I'd know that. All right, that's fine. Well, keep it here on Off Script for more about Godzilla versus Kong and whatever HBO is doing with their wacky release schedule. Either way, Many Saints of Newark and Godzilla vs. Kong will both be coming to the service same day, so I'm excited to watch them whenever they come out, I guess, and we'll likely be reviewing them here. With that, let's jump into our first review. I'm going to be taking the summer on this, so please excuse any stumbles. The movie is Locked Down. So, Lockdown is the story of Paxton and Linda, two star-crossed lovers that have been in a relationship for over 10 years. They're living together, of course, and have been, getting along okay since the pandemic started. Turns out they've been having some relationship troubles. And at some point, they decided they were driving each other crazy and they were just going to split. So as soon as the pandemic's over, they're both going their separate ways. They're getting their own apartments, their own flats, because they're in London, and they're going to, do their own thing. They're both professionals. Paxton's just been furloughed. Linda is working from home in a job that she seems to have a bit of an identity crisis about, because she just doesn't really feel like it's for her. They're both wild. They both like riding motorcycles and listening to loud music, but they've become very refined living in London, being together. And it turns out when given the opportunity to possibly steal something, to commit a crime, right, to do something wrong, to return to the people they once were, these wild children of the night, they jump at the chance and find that maybe their love isn't so lost after all. The thing they're stealing, of course, is a priceless diamond from a very, very nice department store in London, and the stars happen to align where they both have the ability to do it. And throughout the film, they have to fight, struggle, overcome, agree to work together, and decide whether or not they're actually going to go through with committing this heist. So that's Locked Down. The entire thing was shot during the pandemic. It is directed by Doug Liman. I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, what did you think of HBO Max's Locked Down?
Man, this movie was a real struggle. I'm not going to lie. First of all, I need to stop doing this, but I saw that it was 2 hours long. And when I see the premise and I see the runtime, I'm like, there's no way that premise is interesting for that long. And I was correct. This is not really a heist film. It's much more of a relationship drama. Yeah. And it does have, some interesting things there. And it is very much about lockdown. And there's Zoom calls, there's day drinking, there's, job losses and things that a lot of people are really dealing with. But it is much more, like you said, focus on their relationship. It is mostly just involving these two people in their house. It is very slow and it's too long. The heist doesn't start until like 90 minutes in. There's just a lot of like talking and discussing and things. And it was difficult for me to get through.
Yeah, I feel the same way. What's surprising about this movie is one, on its face, it seems like it'd be kind of a fun rom-com, bit heist kind of movie, right? Committing some crimes, getting into some fun. It almost looks like The Breakup on Netflix, right? That movie we watched starring Kamal Nanjiani and oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but that was like a goofy comedy. They get into some shenanigans. Like it's going to be kind of a fun movie. Do you remember her name? Issa Rae. That's it.
It's a Ray, yeah.
I don't know why it took me that
I
long.
love her.
Yeah, the Lovebirds. Good lord, the breakup. The Lovebirds. Yeah, you'd think it'd be like that, and it's not. It's way more like serious HBO Max relationship, and a lot less like fun, goofy heist. In fact, there's very little fun to be had in this movie.
I was going to say the trailer focuses mostly on the heist. That's not what the movie is like at all.
No, and that's definitely a misstep as far as the advertising goes, right? What this movie primarily is, I think, is a project to work on during the pandemic, because that's what most of this movie is. Most of this movie is our actors, Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor, talking to people on Zoom, right? Because they shot this during the pandemic, so realistically, they were like, well, we'll have them talking on Zoom, and it'll be cool and like keen, and people will be familiar with it. And there's very few actual actors and extras in this. Mostly it's shot in an apartment, except for the bit in the department store where there is very few people because the department store is empty because it's lockdown. Like they said it in the film during lockdown, they shot it during lockdown. So everything feels very sterile. Everything feels very removed. And I think director Doug Liman made a mistake here, because I think when they shot this probably months ago, they thought this will feel real and this will feel genuine. But when you watch it now, it just feels like almost phony, because this is the reality we've all been living in, right? We go to movies to escape, and this movie like embraces it in a way that I don't think is positive.
Yeah. This wasn't shot that long ago. It was actually shot in September. So still very recent, but yeah, I agree. It feels like pandemic exploitation.
Yeah, exactly.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah, they joke about face masks, and they have like 8 bottles of hand sanitizer sitting on their counter, and like I get it, but like it's not, I don't think, what most people want to see. Like it's like pandemic exploitation. Yeah, exactly. Like you're taking advantage of the situation, and that go ahead.
I was gonna say, so like one thing is there's a lot of Zoom calls, and like I have to deal with a lot of Zoom calls in my real life, and I don't want to see that in a movie. I go to the movies to escape from what we're dealing with, and I don't want to be reminded. And again, like, so you get a lot of that Zoom call film where it's like fuzzy and grainy, and it's trying to be funny because there's like parts where like it freezes when someone's making a funny face, or someone cuts out, or someone's on mute, like things that we're all kind of dealing with. But it just like, I'd just rather not see a Zoom call on film.
Yeah, so right. I agree. So let's just kind of jump into the film proper here, because I know I'm hitting us with a lot of criticisms. The film is directed by Doug Liman, which is a surprise. This is the director of Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise film. He's director of Swingers. He's the guy actually producing the sequel to Edge of Tomorrow and directing it. And also that movie where Tom Cruise is supposed to go to space, supposedly he's directing that. So this is somebody who's obviously got grand vision, right? This is somebody who can look at a very large picture, very large scope, and take on something challenging. And what he's done here is created something much more sincere, a story about two people trapped in lockdown, right? And you get a little bit of their employees, you get a little bit of the people they work with. Otherwise, it's just them. It's the two of them bouncing off each other. And you have 2 great actors to do this, Anne Hathaway, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who are both pretty good
Oscar winners.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've got a great director, you've got a couple of great actors who are committed to this, you've got small scope. It seems like you can't go wrong, but you can in the writing. Our characters are vain. They're very vain, and they're petty, and one of them is a poet, and he is constantly like espousing nonsense into the room. And they both seem like they'd be very smart, like sophisticated individuals, right up until they're like trying to steal a diamond, and it turns out, oh, they're not actually really that clever at all. They're kind of like not great people. And the movie doesn't make any effort to like remedy that. It just kind of displays them to you as these individuals, and that it just feels a little lazy and tone deaf, considering the pandemic and the problems like the world is facing. But it's an interesting line to pursue, like a crime in the middle of this, right? To steal something from a place when nobody's looking. I think that's interesting, but that's not till like the third act of the film.
Yeah, I mean it. Like I said, the trailer makes it seem like a Ocean's 11 type heist. But trying to get away from too much criticism, like you said. So first of all, if the movie would have just been a relationship drama and just focused on that, it probably would have been better. So kind of focusing on that part of the film, we have these people that have been in a relationship for 10 years. They've decided, before all this has started, they've decided to call it quits and kind of move on there. And they're waiting for, at this point, the lockdown was only supposed to be a few weeks. So they're just kind of waiting for the lockdown to be done. And then they're going to kind of go their separate ways. Paxton is very much like a blue collar guy. He has a delivery driving job. He rides a motorbike. Linda is like VP, or no, she's like CEO of something, London branch, very high level management position and very white collar job. And so they're kind of, they've drifted apart. They think that it's over. They want to move on. That's actually pretty interesting. Like I said, if it would have been advertised as a relationship drama, I could have gotten on board with it a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean that's something we were looking at last week. The trailer for Netflix is Malcolm and Marie, right? Like it is very clearly two people having relationship problems. That's the movie, right? Like you look at something like Blue Valentine, like that's what's going on. This movie makes a little bit of effort to make that clear in the advertising, but then it really leans on the heist, right? They're stealing something and they're getting up to shenanigans. And heists are fun, right? Heists grab attention. People love a good heist. But this movie like really just kind of phones it in. Like you don't end up with any kind of like really tremendous heisting at the end of the movie. It's just kind of like social engineering. They just kind of talk their way into the situation and then try to talk their way out. And the end of the movie is whether or not they actually make it. It's up to you to watch it and find out. But that's not very exciting visually. It's a very plain kind of film. And it was shot almost all handheld to give kind of movement and feeling and emotion to it. And they've got this wonderful flat that they're shooting in with all this wonderful architecture and kind of geometry and shapes and colors. Looks like it came right out of IKEA. But it just kind of falls a little flat when like 90 minutes of your 2-hour picture are just two people hanging out chatting.
Yeah,
it's hard to get through, right?
Like their lives and relationships, and
yeah,
what am I doing with my life? What's it all mean? There's this kind of an issue. So Anne Hathaway is so one of the things she has to do very early on is she has to fire a lot of people as being an executive, and she feels really bad about it. And I don't know, it's a very like kind of privileged situation she's in where she's like, oh, I don't like she said she gets promoted at one point, and she's like, I don't know, this job feels empty and soulless. Maybe I should just quit. And it's like, if we're watching this, where like unemployment is a real big issue right now, and the movie, and it's in the movie, but it just seems like it's not a real threat to anyone there. Like no one's actually worried about not being able to pay their bills in the movie.
Right, like not at all. They live in this like tremendous flat, like that's small, but like is very nice with like multi-level flooring and this like balcony patio thing with all these plants in the backyard. Like it's a very nice place. It looks like the director's summer home or something that they went and shot this whole thing in over like a week. That along with that, like, I'm not a fan of this like Zoom call thing. I know
me neither.
It's more popular now than ever. It was a little bit of a thing with like horror films about teenagers who were involved in like smartphones and technology. Right, a few years ago, there were a lot of movies coming out of like teens that are like on web chats together or webcasts. And this movie leans into that and says, well, it's the pandemic. Everybody's on Zoom. So we get a lot of people appearing on Zoom. A lot of prominent actors, actually. Mark Gatiss, Stephen Merchant, Ben Stiller appears in this film.
Yeah, there's a lot of cameos.
Yeah, little cameos and kind of spots from actors and actresses who are appearing on Zoom. But like it's patently obvious they did not go send out like a second camera crew to film these actors and actresses and then like put their footage into the movie with like good editing and kind of make it look like a Zoom and kind of force it. No, they just had them set up like their phones or something. And they were probably like, we'll pay you $1,000 to film a couple scenes or whatever for us real quick. Do you mind filming this thing? And then we'll splice it all together in editing. And it looks terrible. Like watching a Zoom call freeze up in like a feature film is not in any way pleasant. Like that doesn't like immerse me in the film. It takes me right out of it. And I'm like,
Yeah,
this is
T.J.
lazy. Yeah, this is uninspired. This is contrived. This isn't cinematic. This isn't cinema. This is boring. I want more. I need more. This stuff's not going to do it for me. And this movie is like full of it. There are a ton of Zoom calls in this movie. And maybe that won't be distracting to you, but to me it was brutal, man. I couldn't take it.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand a couple of them, but there's a lot of them, and they go on for a long time. And like I said, you go to the movies to kind of escape what's happening in the world, and I don't want to be reminded of not only what is happening, but like I don't want to be reminded of going to work, and that's what this kind of reminded me of with all of these Zoom calls, and it just seems really, really tone deaf.
Yeah, it really does. And you're right. Like people getting fired during the pandemic is like obviously unfortunate, but like anybody that gets fired in this movie is like a phenomenally high level executive that's getting fired at like their summer home in Aspen. Like it is not any kind of like heart wrenching problem. This is like the firstest of first class. And while we've got some wonderful locations we're shooting in, I love the look of this movie. I kind of love the claustrophobic feel of being in lockdown with these people. Like ultimately it just doesn't come across as anything bigger. Now you did say it is adapted from a play, which makes a lot more sense because I didn't know that.
No, not this. This isn't.
Oh, this one isn't. Okay, well this is just bad from the get-go then. All right, well then our next film is adapted from a play. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we could stand to do much better. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed by just kind of what comes out of this. It was genuinely advertised to be something broader.
Yeah, yeah, definitely some. Like I said, they play up the highs so much in the trailer, and it's a very small part of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Really a shame. The music was okay. Like I said, the directing wasn't anything outstanding. I wish our actors had a little bit more meat to chew on. They kind of just don't. I think they're passionate for what they're doing, but they're supposed to be two bitter people, right? They don't even look like they're having fun because they're not supposed to be having fun. They're supposed to be miserable. They're supposed to be driving each other crazy. It's just a tough watch for 2 hours. It's a big ask in the middle of a pandemic. So yeah. Any other thoughts for recommendations?
I'm ready to move on.
Andy, would you recommend Lockdown?
Hard pass. I haven't had a hard pass in a while.
You haven't had a hard pass in a while.
I think I need to be more one side or the other. No, this was a real struggle to get through. It's a full 2 hours long. I think shorter runtime might have helped it not just feel such a struggle to get through. It's mostly a relationship drama. It is not really a heist film. The heist, all that stuff comes way late in the film, and it's supposed to be like this weird allegory for their relationship as well, which doesn't really work out. The performances are fine. Like Ejiofor and Hathaway are really good in what they have to do when they're given, but it just seems really tone deaf. Like we're still dealing with the pandemic. People are dying. People are losing their jobs. Like all these things are still very relevant, a little bit too real. And at the end, it's not very entertaining. It's not very, it's doesn't help you escape from this situation. And it was just too long, and it was a struggle to get through. So I'm gonna say hard pass.
Same here, hard pass. It's rare we say, hey, just completely pass on this film, but like, there's just nothing going on here that's worth watching. There's nothing memorable. There's nothing that like, there's no great camera work or solid directing or good scripting or great acting. Nothing jumps out here that makes me say you have to go watch this movie right now. Nothing even close. Hard pass. It's just like this little. It's like a little indie film you'd see at Redbox for like $4, and you'd be like, "Wow, why is the new Anne Hathaway film so cheap?" And it's just because nothing's happening here.
It's going on worse of the year already.
Yeah, it's just not good. So hard pass on Lockdown. Man, we don't hard pass anything on this show. Wow.
we usually, yeah.
Yeah, 2021, new people. Anyway, that being said, we need to move on to our next segment. Andy, would you mind giving us the intro, please?
It is time for the trailer park. So we're going to be talking about a couple of trailers. The first one is called Cherry. And this is a kind of not action. It's like a action drama heist bank robbery film starring Tom Holland, who plays a young veteran who's come back from overseas deployment, and he's really struggling. He struggles with employment. This doesn't point it out in the trailer, but he begins robbing banks to get money for his pill addiction, essentially. And
Oh,
so it doesn't say that in the trailer. That is the summary, though. But the trailer looks really pretty good because it's a lot of him robbing banks, being essentially being abandoned and also trying to be in this relationship with this girl that he's obviously very in love with, but as well as balancing like being a veteran and whatever war or conflict he was involved in and PTSD. There's a lot going on. This looks really good. I'm pretty interested in it. What do you think?
I'm definitely interested in what this movie's doing. I don't like the platform it's on, but I can talk about that in a second. I like that it's the Russo brothers, right? Like, not only are they popular for the Avengers, more recently with Netflix's Extraction, that was a pretty solid little action movie they produced. This is something they're formally directing, right? I'm pretty sure they like full on are directing Cherry, I think. And hey, Tom Holland's great. I like the idea of our young, innocent typecast Spider-Man being put in compromising positions where he has to be the bad guy. It's interesting, right? Looking at this trailer, it reminds me a little bit of like Hell or High Water, especially with the bank robberies. But people who are likely not necessarily bad people doing bad things for what they think are good reason makes for good tension, makes for good filmmaking. So I'm interested. I don't want to have to get a stupid Apple TV Plus subscription to watch it, but if it's for the show, maybe I can get Andy to do it and I can go over and watch it at his place. Maybe that's
that is the one big downside is this is coming to Apple TV Plus, which is kind of difficult to get to. We've complained about this before. I have to, connect something or like download it to my computer, then connect it to my TV, something to watch it. Zach would have to watch it on his phone.
Yeah.
So that's pretty lame. But I think they are developing apps for some other devices, which should hopefully make it easier. But that's the one big downfall. But this does look really good, and I like Tom Holland a lot, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the next trailer we're talking about is a Netflix film called I Care a Lot. The trailer came out for this just the other day. It stars Rosamund Pike as what appears to be a doting legal guardian for senior citizens who unexpectedly turns out to be essentially ripping them off, right? Taking older senior citizens who are assigned by the court to be not able to take care of themselves. She puts them in an old folks home. She takes all their money. She pays out whatever they're going to need for the rest of their lives. And she keeps the rest. And she meets her match when, surprisingly, she comes across a woman who does not quite fall for her swindle and in fact introduces her to a heap of problems. Rosamund Pike appears to be playing a bit of her Gone Girl character, right? This kind of charming woman who under the surface turns out to be a little bit more than meets the eye. And I'm excited to see this. It's by the writer and director of The Descent Part 2 and the movie The Fifth Wave. And more recently, HBO's Gunpowder. It's that show starring Kit Harington. It was like 3 episodes. It came out after Game of Thrones, where he plays somebody involved with the British Revolution. The writer and director seems like a long shot. Rosamund Pike seems like fun. Just pretty solid trailer. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, it looks interesting. I watched this trailer a couple of times. I didn't really like it the first time, or the second time it kind of grew on me. Yeah, she is kind of playing a similar to like her Amazing Amy character in Gone Girl. What's interesting is we also see what's his name? I can't remember. Tyrion Lannister or Game of Thrones.
Oh gosh,
Peter Dinklage shows up as well because apparently she inadvertently gets involved with some gangsters and led by Peter Dinklage. So we get to see Peter Dinklage being a gangster. That looks like a lot of fun. This looks interesting. I'm glad it's coming out on Netflix. Seems perfect. It seems like a Netflix movie.
100%. Whereas Cherry seems like a film that could come out in theaters. I Care a Lot definitely seems like a straight to streaming number and a good one at that. Like not something shoddy. Like it seems like a well-made film. So I don't know. I'm interested, I guess.
Yeah, and those are both coming out next month on streaming.
Yes, Cherry will be available on Apple TV Plus on February 26th. I Care a Lot will be available on Netflix on February 19th. With that being said, Andy, do you want to take the summary on our final film, I suppose?
Yes, I will. One Night in Miami. So this is a new film from Regina King, her directorial debut. It's based on a play by Kemp Powers, and it features a kind of a fictional night that happens in the early 60s, featuring 4 prominent members of the civil rights movement, Malcolm X, Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. Like I said, it's based on a play, and it mostly features these 4 figures of the civil rights movement, talking about the movement, the past, the present, the future, what it means, what's happening, what they're all doing, what they can be doing, maybe what they should be doing. So it's very dramatic. It's a long film, but there's a lot going on in there. But that's our summary. Zach, what'd you think?
So I like a lot about this movie. I think I would have liked the play more than I liked the film. Regina King does a fine job as her first seat in the director's chair. She's got framing down, she's got color, a little bit of movement, but nothing really exciting as far as the camera work goes. Nothing that really jumps out at you. It's basically four guys hanging out in a room chatting for most of the film, a little bit like Lockdown. And that's a little disappointing because the subject matter is so interesting. All four of these characters, I mean, they're heroes. They're legends of Black culture. They're very exciting. And as I watched the film, the more I got to thinking, man, these guys are really great. And I'd like to know more about them. The film does not do a lot of service to telling the story cinematically. It's just a little flush that way, but I think the subject matter is really interesting. I really enjoyed the performances. I think Regina King is great at getting those out of people, and I am excited to talk about it. So, where do you want to start talking about this?
Well, let's just start at the plot. So we do start in kind of in Miami at the title fight where Muhammad Ali fought and defeated Sonny Liston. This is where we start, and all our four figures are there, and they eventually end up back at a hotel room. It takes us a while to get there. It takes about a half hour for everyone to get back to the hotel room. Like I said, the trailer makes it seem a lot more cinematic, and I agree with you. Like, it is difficult making a play be cinematic because plays by their nature only have very limited sets. So unfortunately, the movie also has a very limited set and mostly takes place in the hotel room. But they all finally get back and they start discussing what is happening within the movement, what is changing. We learn that this is right before Cassius Clay would become Muhammad Ali and join the Nation of Islam and convert to or to be a Muslim. So there's a lot going on in here, but it is similar to Lockdown. There's a lot of talking in like one room, and it's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, fortunately, the subject matter is a little bit more interesting than one person's relationship, right? We're juggling multiple relationships, as well as characters who represent a larger culture, one that's been suppressed, one that's had trouble succeeding in America, and these are four very successful black men who one way or another have accomplished what they set out to do, but find themselves still challenged, right? It's not as easy as just being an artist and recording a song. Maybe you have to say something, or in Malcolm X's case, it's not so easy to find fame. Sometimes you have to speak your mind and maybe it'll come to you. And some people don't take you seriously. Each one of these individuals has their own motivations, right? They're their own people. Muhammad Ali, or Cassius Clay, as he is in this film right up until the end, is a title fighter. He's like 22 years old in this movie, which there's no way his actor's 22. Eli Gorey is not 22. There's no way. Aldous Hodge plays Jim Brown, a star football player, one of the best in the league up at that point. Leslie Odom Jr. plays Sam Cooke, a brilliant blues, I guess not blues, R&B artist who has turned out many a hit that you've probably heard even to this day if you're not familiar with him. And Kingsley Ben-Adir plays Malcolm X, who is tremendous. All four of these guys are great. I love their characters. I love the way they quarrel and fight and agree and side with one another to ultimately try to come to some kind of consensus on what it means to be Black in America. It's fascinating.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting is that the play or the film focuses on on transition, because they are all at a point in their career where things are going to change. We have Malcolm X is going to be leaving the Nation of Islam to start his own organization. Muhammad Ali, or Cassius Clay, is going to convert to Islam and join Malcolm X in whatever he's doing. Jim Brown is thinking of quitting the NFL and possibly pursuing a career in Hollywood. And Sam Cooke is someone who has found success but is looking to say more with his art. So kind of this transitioning in all of these characters' lives is one of the interesting parts of the movie.
Yeah, it's a shame this is fiction. I know it's based on a play. It's obviously based on true events. It says at the beginning and the end of the film. It's based on very real people. But it's such an interesting idea, and it's a shame it never happened, because if there was a little bit more to root this in reality, if maybe the four of them had hung out for a few hours in a hotel, it'd be really intriguing to think what they had said. But for all we know, these guys never even met. Like, I don't know that Jim Brown met Sam Cooke. They probably did. They were definitely alive all at the same time, but like, who knows if this stuff really happened. But regardless of that, the fiction told is interesting. There's really, really cool character development here. There's really cool growth. There's really cool frustration and anger expressed at one another. Malcolm X is upset at the way that Sam Cooke has been doing music, because he says you're just singing other people's songs. You're not actually saying anything about the black struggle. And Sam Cooke is frustrated, like, well, why do I have to say anything? And who are you to tell me, right? You're not even famous. What have you accomplished? All you do is get up on a stage and spout rhetoric next to famous people, and that elevates your status, but you don't actually have any skill. You don't actually have any growth. I love that. Like, I love the quarrels. I love the debate. Like, that's some good pulpy character stuff. And I love that these guys are in a closed environment to do that in. They don't have external forces telling them who they can and can't be. They decide that for themselves. And that makes for some really interesting writing. And I think it's well done. I think the play by Kemp Powers is probably really good stuff. I'd like to see it at some point.
Yeah, that's how I felt as well, is that this is probably a really great play, and I would love to see the play. It just doesn't transfer to film very well.
Yeah. I don't think Regina King does a bad job, though. I think it's a fine first out. I think she needs more action. She needs more dollies under that camera. She needs more whip pans and like snapshots, and like, she needs a little bit more technique. I think the bones are here for something great. I'll be excited to see what she does next. But this just falls a little flat in the director's chair, I think. But it's okay. It's a first swing at it. It's a hopeful first start. That's
yeah. I was going to mention once again runtime. It's pretty long. It's full 2 hours, and again,
yes.
It's 2 hours of mostly being in a hotel room. So I think the script could have been tightened up, and it could have been a little bit shorter. And you got to find a way to make this cinematic. Another film, Fences, that we reviewed several years ago with Denzel Washington, suffers from the same problems. That film mostly takes place in someone's backyard because that's what happens in the play. But when things are film, you got to make it more like the movie. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is actually a really good example of that, where it was shorter, it was 90 minutes, and it felt cinematic enough to not make me think, oh, this is definitely a play.
Yeah. Looking at this week's kind of slate of films that we were watching, it's definitely it's easy for Andy and I to get jaded about runtimes, but like, real talk, your movie's got to be pretty good to be longer than 90 minutes. Like, it's got to be tight. And this movie doesn't quite hit it. It could be shorter. There's some good development at the beginning and the end. Like you said, the front is almost like front loaded with a half hour of not the actual conflict, of these guys not together. It's just the build up and explaining who they are, which is important, of course. But the ending kind of, in a similar way, kind of caps it with like kind of this 10-minute interlude of growth and change and how these characters develop. But like, it doesn't, I don't know. I don't mean to say it doesn't feel very conclusive, but it's not supposed to be, right? It's one night in Miami. It's not supposed to be a beginning, a middle, and end of a story. It's us taking a look at what could have been the middle of all of these men's stories. And in that way, it doesn't fail. It just doesn't feel particularly satisfying. By the time it got to the end, I expected some kind of a larger resolution, more growth, and I didn't quite get that. But you might have. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it definitely, it feels more like the beginning, like that. It feels like the beginning of something.
Yes,
with all these very important figures talking about the future, talking about the struggles of Black America now, and what is and isn't going right, and what needs to change. And by the end of it, like, again, it feels like the beginning of something big, but not, you don't really get a satisfying conclusion. Like, I agree with that.
No. And as far as the rest of the film goes, like I said, I think it's shot fine. I enjoyed the music. I'm a big Sam Cooke fan, so that's easy. You get Sam Cooke in a movie. You got Leslie Odom Jr., famous from Hamilton, of course, singing all of Sam's parts in the film. I mean, it's pretty solid. pretty solid. I enjoyed it a lot. And I enjoyed this kind of look back at history, even if it's a fictional retelling. Ultimately, I did like this movie. I certainly liked it more than Lockdown, but it's not perfect. It's got problems. And I think that's worth noting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very important film. And it again it's looking, even though it's looking at the 60s, a lot of these the topics they talk about, the situations are still very relevant to today.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend One Night in Miami?
I think if you're interested in kind of this period in history, if you're interested in these characters and like civil rights history, I think it is pretty interesting. I do think it was a little difficult for me to get through because it is pretty long and it is mostly four people talking in a hotel room. So that's just a struggle to get through, and it's not super cinematic. Like I said, I think it probably works a lot better as a play.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think it has more value than something like Lockdown. I wouldn't say a hard pass, but you got to be looking for something specific when you come watch One Night in Miami, right? I'd say if you're looking for, a story of Black culture, certainly a story about Black heroes. I think this is really good. If you had maybe a young son or daughter who didn't know a lot about Malcolm X or Sam Cooke or Muhammad Ali, this might be a cool place to kind of give them a little bit of a primer as to who these people are. They're all played brilliantly. I think there's a lot of passion in the roles. I think there's a lot of passion in the writing. But ultimately, there's not anything to like write home about here. There's nothing that says stop what you're doing. You got to go watch this movie right now. It's pretty good. I'd recommend it for somebody who is looking for something a little drier, maybe a little less action, bit more of a character drama. I'd say you could do well with this movie. Certainly better than Lockdown. It's available on Amazon Prime, and Andy, I think that's our show.
I think that is.
Yeah. What are we watching next week?
So we're actually going to be taking the week off. There's not a lot of new releases. That a lot of times happens in longer months or when you have a lot of weekends on in 1 month. The streaming releases get kind of weak towards the end. So skipping next week, but we will be looking forward to The Little Things, which is going to be on January 29th on HBO Max, which is it's with Denzel Washington and Jared Leto. It's a serial killer cop procedural drama.
Yeah, and Rami Malek is like Denzel Washington's buddy cop. It could be cool. I'm a little skeptical. The more I see trailers for that movie, the more I'm like, this looks way drier than the trailers imply. Like, it looks like it's just going to be like a really quiet, solemn thing, and not like Seven. And I don't need it to be Seven, but like, give me something between like Seven and Prisoners, right? With Hugh Jackman, like something right in there. I'm into. Like anything less than that, it's just going to be boring as toast. But we'll see. I'm excited to watch it. I'm glad we're taking the week off. It'll be a nice break, and yeah, I guess that's our piece. If you enjoyed the show today, you can find us on Facebook where we live stream the show every single Tuesday, except for next week when we're off. You can find us on YouTube where we archive our streams. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We got a website, offscriptfilmreview.com, and you can mail us at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. Right into the show. All right, we read your correspondence on the air. We swear, no cursing. This is a family-friendly show. Tell us what you thought of these films. Tell us what you want us to watch, right? Give us your top 10 list of the year. We'll check it out. We'll talk about it. Why not? We'll make a whole segment out of it. It'd be great. Maybe we'll have you on. We'll invite you. But if you want to do anything for the show, if there's something you can do to help us out, please just subscribe. Just subscribe to the show on your favorite platform, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, anywhere you're at. And it'll help us tremendously. You don't even know how much it'll help us. You could also rate and review the show. That'd be huge as well. But we appreciate you listening either way. The show would not be possible without each and every one of you. So thanks for tuning in, gang. And from all of us at Offscript, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for listening.